From the new recording lair located deep beneath the Wine and Spirit store in Ephrata, Pennsylvania.
You're listening to the Masonic Light Podcast.
Studio 665 presents Masonic Light Podcast. This show is recorded by Masons, for Masons. It is for entertainment purposes only. And please, no wagering.
This podcast is not endorsed by any Grand Lodge, and the ridiculous ramblings of the hosts are their own. And now, here's your host.
Hey, everybody. 68. Episode 68. I'm getting hand signals from my defensive coordinator.
Nice.
Well, welcome, everyone. I hope you're all enjoying this deep freeze we're currently having. Hey, we have a little bit of a shake-up here tonight. Jason, our producer, is...
Not producing.
He's observing.
I am. It feels wonderful.
Josh, the intern, is producing.
So the driver's seat.
Now I have another monitor slaved to the recording computer, so I can see all the flub-ups.
And in place of Jack Harley, who's still recovering from what I did to his car the other night, post-grotto, Tim Dedman is filling in for Jack. And, of course, Larry's here.
Larry's here.
You have to wake him up.
And our guest, Brother Jim Stevens. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
What did you do to Jack's car?
So we met at a brewery.
Right.
And they don't have any normal liquor.
Right.
So it has to be Pennsylvania-based, and I don't like microbrews. So
Right, okay.
I asked for a whiskey and Coke.
Sounds like shot and bottle.
Well, they don't have whiskey. They didn't have whiskey. All they had was like this cheap Pennsylvania rail rum. And exactly. I guess I started drinking doubles, seeing triple, and then they didn't have... the food was awful. It was like vegan chili and vegan sausages. So... Needless to say, I drank more than I ate and made the correct decision not to drive home.
Oh, good.
But, Jack's interior might have taken a hit.
Oh, no.
Just the door.
But a lesson well learned for anyone planning Masonic food events, don't go with the vegan menu. Get a bunch of men in a room and feed them a bunch of vegan stuff.
It doesn't soak up the alcohol the way that carbs do.
No, not at all.
And grease.
We had reports of intestinal issues from several members the next day. So yours was coming out your mouth, and
oh man,
others were coming out elsewhere.
I'm sorry I asked.
Yeah.
All right. So does anybody have anything monumental Masonically that happened the past couple weeks they'd like to? Jason, no?
Thought we weren't going to talk about.
Well, we're not going to go into the minutia of we had goose and gridiron breakfast again.
No, it's been a quiet start. I don't remember where we were at the last recording, but if we didn't talk about it, first meeting as junior warden went fine. That's really it. But it's been a quiet month. Work has been busy, but that's about it.
My first meeting is Grand Tall Cedar. The Supreme Tall Cedar decides to show up to my first meeting, which was fun.
I'll get that out of the way.
Yeah, so I got all my mistakes out of the way with the big cheese present. Alrighty, so...
you didn't make Josh say hi.
Hey, Josh, say hi.
Hello.
He's probably got the best radio voice when he's not talking.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, Cigar Lodge got snowed out, so we were pushing that on our last episode, and it got... snowed out, unfortunately.
Get closer to the mic.
But February is on, and we'll talk about that later.
Or move it closer to your mouth.
Alrighty. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk to Brother Jim Stevens, who is the author of Lodge Business, the theoretical application of entrepreneurial business practices to Blue Lodge.
There you had to go the whole title.
Tim asked in our private Facebook group, what's the title of Jim's book? And I started typing it, and I was like, shoot, I don't remember this. That's why. So I found the Amazon link and just posted it on the page.
All right, so we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about how to use business principles to make our lodges run better. The Red Serpent by Larry Merris. One man's obsession to avenge the death of his wife uncovers a long-hidden ancient blueprint to perfect the world for future generations. Visit www.larrymerris.com. You can purchase this book anywhere except CVS.
Welcome back. We have, as Pete said earlier, our guest tonight is James Stevens, and the publisher and the author of Lodge Business. Jim, tell us a little bit about your book.
You know, it started.
Oh my time, Jim. I'm sorry. Larry has never let a guest speak.
A monumental moment in Masonic Light podcast history.
You should be honored. He's actually letting you talk, and I'm going to do the same. Jim, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, it started. I don't know how many years ago it started, but I always have these ideas bouncing around in my head of things that I think need to be said or written, and it'll bounce around in the head for quite a while. And sometime it was probably early spring of 2018. I thought it's time to write, and so I literally sat down in a matter of effectively a weekend and put out 30 or 40 pages of kind of an outline of what I felt could be done better from operating a lodge, budgets, purpose, that kind of stuff. And I sent it out to a couple of trusted brothers and said, am I crazy? Or am I onto something here? And then the process just kind of kept going, and it took about 4.5 months. It evolved over multiple different generations. So the book itself, it's a long title, the theoretical application. It's not a secret that I've not been in the East yet, so you can't sit there and say that you practiced this or done it. And even if you were, there's no way that any one lodge is going to adopt any of the ideas. So just kind of said, okay, if I could start from scratch, how would I organize it? And I'm a huge believer in purpose. So that was, in the book I say, purpose is everything, and let that kind of evolve from there. So I talk about purpose, I talk about goal setting, I talk about problem solving, I talk about mentorship and leadership, not mentorship from the true Masonic perspective, but mentorship from developing leaders. And then developing your own leadership and how to prepare for the East. And I believe it was Brother Harley, Jack, who at one point in time said, you really need to put some good practical examples in. So I tried to wrapped up the book with some good practical examples in terms of good goals and how to set them and how to work through them. But in the end, it's intended to be kind of an introduction to all of the topics. The idea being, introduce something new and you can go out and do some more research. I list a number of books in there that I have found value. But to kind of wrap that question up, it all comes out of my personal business life. I apply all of all of this stuff in this book in my business life. Everything from BHAGs all the way through purpose and goals and troubleshooting and Eisenhower boxes and all that kind of stuff I use in business. And it's been very successful. And I believe to my core that it can be successful in Lodge as well. And it's not a sin to think of Lodge as a business.
Well, I noticed you wrote it like a business person, not like an author that, can't get to the point.
Right.
You get right to the point in the first chapter. And the first chapter is core purpose. And you really kind of I never thought of that. What is the purpose of the Masonic Lodge? And it's different for everybody.
A week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, the District 1 here in Lancaster had their officers meeting, and the district deputy asked me to take a couple minutes, and I started that session with the masters that were in the room and saying, what is your lodge's core purpose? What is your purpose? And I let the officers for each lodge kind of on their own come up with that. And they had some really great stuff, but everybody had different opinions, which you would expect. But one of the things that I like to and I emphasize in the book is it's not good enough just to kind of have the our purpose is education, or our purpose is, that's almost too broad. On the last episode, you guys were talking about, kind of what you wanted the podcast to be. And while it's not necessarily purpose, it's more like goals. And you were talking about additional listeners and that kind of stuff. Well, that needs to be numerically defined. What is additional? And then obviously the idea of the BHAG is that would be, we want to be at 50,000 listeners by 2020, and then you start working back from that in terms of how to get there. But that's where I think a lot of people have fall down with the purpose, is they come up with this, we make good men better, and the stuff that you generally hear, but then it doesn't go anywhere.
So let's back up just a hair, because Larry dropped the ball and didn't give a lead-in of your credentials. And I know you mentioned, obviously I know, you mentioned you're not Worshipful Master, or have not been in the East. However, I think that we should talk about your bio just briefly. Masonic Scholar for the Academy of Masonic Knowledge.
Yep.
Right. Just recently got your Hogratz HGA.
Technically speaking, waiting for my level 3rd paper to be graded, but it's sitting there.
Former Lodge Secretary?
Former Lodge Secretary. Yeah, I did that backwards. I'm following in Jason's footsteps.
No, I followed in yours.
Do Secretary first and then go into the chairs.
And then professionally, you are CEO of a large commercial construction company here in Lancaster, probably the biggest.
Yeah, it's part of a conglomerate. The conglomerate will do about 1.8 billion this year in annual revenue. I'm president of one of the parts of that conglomerate, and we'll do 30 million in revenue this year in my group.
President, not CEO.
President, yes. Right. And I'm the managing partner. There's 2 partners that have the company. And like I said, in that business, all of the principles that are in this book, I apply on a daily basis. We live and breathe them. So I really feel strongly behind them. It's not, something that comes out of air. And as you said, Pete, as you said, I wrote it as a businessman. I mean, that is in the end what I am,
Well, you're also a glutton for punishment, because not only do you take on all this Masonic stuff, you're also on the planning commission for the Manheim Township?
I do sit on the planning commission. You
get people yelling at you?
Meeting. Yes. Yeah. What the weird part about serving in any civic body like that, whether it be a school board or a town commission or planning, people only show up when they're angry at you. They never show up when they're very happy with you. And so, you have to do the business of the township, but some nights it's a blessing that there's nobody in the room, because you know that you haven't upset anybody, at least in the last couple of weeks.
One of the things that I found interesting, and it actually came at the end of your book where you gave the recommended reading list, was how you tied in many of the common readings that people who work in this world of strategic planning or goal setting, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Good to Great, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and so on. Many of the themes from those books are included with yours. And as someone who has worked in a world where those learnings were very important, it made it very easy for me, as, for example, lodge secretary and past master in my lodge, to see the connections to those areas. And I found that very, very helpful in terms of reading it.
It was important to me to write it from the perspective of, one of the best things about this fraternity is anybody can become master. And the reality of it is, even though I talk about master, there's plenty of leadership positions in lodge that aren't the master, and this book would help them all. But there's a lot of people who this might be their only opportunity in life to lead. And that's part of the magic of the fraternity, is anybody can do that. And so I wanted to write a book that really would help them, at least start to get their toe in a couple of things, give them some ideas. If they hit some bumps in the road, be able to kind of have a reference point, and then, list some books that they can go in deeper if they want to. I said in the book that, I had a wise gentleman a number of years ago talk about how many masters come in and they have no leadership experience, and they'll spend 9 months just figuring out what they're supposed to be doing. And by the time they figure it out, they might have a month before they're effectively a lame duck and out. And, we really do need to accelerate that process for them. That a year isn't enough. If you're spending 9 months of it just learning the job.
Exactly. And I'm thinking back to a few episodes ago when you had the Grand Master in here, and he was talking about how he and the Deputy Grand Master and the other officers had committed to each other to continue the types of things that were being brought into place. And it falls, again, right in line with kind of the principles of your book. You can't do this in just a year. It's got to be a look at, while you may not be able to look at a 10-year plan, we should easily be able to look at a 3 to 5 year plan.
Should be able to look at a 3 to 5 year plan. And there's two parts to that, because if you are not having a couple of good series of years in a row, you're repeating too much, but you also have the possibility of undoing it. And then there's a whole wasted year or two, because you have 1 year undoing, the other. I used to manage electrical contracting company, and we used to have a joke that the first shift spends 4 hours working and 4 hours messing up the second shift, and the second shift spends 4 hours fixing what the first shift did wrong, and then it's 4 hours of working. If you don't have good coordination in those lines, you can end up with the same thing. The next master undoes what the previous master does, and you lose a whole series of years.
Explain to our listeners and those people who are going to be buying the book and those people who have already booked, explain the acronym BHAG.
Big, hairy, audacious goal. The idea behind it, and I'm not going to remember now the author. You'll probably remember the author.
Stephen Tracy?
No.
Hawking?
It's in there.
It's
you're
in there.
you're
It's a
scanning
reference
through
in
it.
there, yeah.
Names, places, faces, dates are always a problem for me. I never remember that kind of stuff. But the idea is you want to set a goal, and not a small goal, a very big goal that in the business world, ideally it would be 10, 15 years out, and you have maybe a 70% likelihood of succeeding. And the idea is to create such an inertial push that it moves the organization. So even if you miss it, you still have verifiable success. Some of the more famous BHAGs, the moonshot by Kennedy is probably the most talked about. He knew that even if they didn't get there by the end of the decade, the advances from science and the advances in space science and all that kind of stuff would propel the country forward. And it acts as a unifying force behind not only the organization, but in that case, the nation. At work right now, we have a BHAG that it's a sales-oriented BHAG. It's for 2025, and it's to be a top 10 ranked dealer by 2025. And to be there, we would need to grow somewhere between 20 and 25% a year. Last year, it was year one of our BHAG, and we were at 107% of goal. It unifies the entire organization and directs them forward into doing stuff.
It was actually Jim Collins in Built to Last. So
there you go. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate you looking that up.
Once I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, I knew that. I think the key though is you set this overarching BHAG without limits. In
Yes.
other words, if you didn't have to worry about other obstacles, what in your wildest dreams, what could you achieve?
And then the idea is to have that be a couple of, obviously years out. And then that creates, in the age of GPSs, that's where you're going. That's where you're going. But you need turn-by-turn directions. So then you take each of the next several years and say, okay, well, here's what we have to do each of the several years to get there. One of the examples in the book, I talk about, a lodge who's decided that their BHAG is they really want to more or less master the 7 liberal arts. So that lodge, that plan that's in the example in the book is each year they take one of the 7, and that's the year. They're going to teach it, they're going to talk about it, they're going to discuss it, and they know that if they do that, after 7 years, they're going to have gotten there. That's not quite a numerical example, but that's the idea is you have this big theme that you want to accomplish, and it provides everybody the direction. And now, once you have that direction, you break it down into manageable segments. In our case, because of the way most of the lodges work, a year works, but it doesn't have to be a year.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you successfully point out in the book is that each lodge is different from every other lodge.
As it should be.
Yeah, as it should be. But yet, we as Freemasons think in a big collective picture. And when it comes to our lodge, we have a hard time differentiating our lodge and the big picture of Freemasonry.
Well, one of the things that happens from any organization as old as ours is you get to a kind of a stagnation, and you have trouble defining yourselves. And I talk about in the book, the growing portions, whether it be AMD or traditional observance lodges, those types of things. The newness provides that energy. But when you have a lodge that's 200, 250, 300, 500 years old, you get an inertia that takes hold. And then your identity starts to form around that inertia. So the Grand Lodge starts to really have influence in that, as it should, and it kind of forms the identity for you. But we all also have to remember, and the Grand Lodge, all the Grand Lodges were formed out of the existing subordinate lodges at the time the Grand Lodge existed. It's the Blue Lodge that is Freemasonry. And I think sometimes, I know there's a lot of right worshipful people who are going to not like this statement, but the reality of it is, it's the Blue Lodge.
Right.
I'm a libertarian by love. The power exists at the smallest unit possible and then is granted, not the other way around.
Well, Larry's begging for a break. We'll take a quick break and come back with author Jim Stevens.
At the Historic Smithton Inn of Ephrata, Pennsylvania, we're pleased to serve the latest creations from Weathered Vineyard Winery, along with spirits from Thistlefinch Distillery in Lancaster, all to be experienced in the tasting room of a beautifully restored 18th century bed and breakfast. Cigars by D&S Cigar are available for your enjoyment in the courtyard. The Historic Smithton Inn is convenient to Lancaster County's most interesting attractions. Just minutes from the Ephrata Cloister and the Green Dragon Farmers Market. And a short drive can get you to charming Lidditz, thriving downtown Lancaster, as well as Hershey, Bird in Hand, and Intercourse. Or Valley Forge and Gettysburg. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or an active vacation full of sightseeing and attractions, the Historic Smithton Inn will be a welcoming oasis from everyday life, one that you'll want to visit again and again. Stop in and visit at 900 West Main Street in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, or check out our website at historicsmithtoninn.com, or simply call us at 717-733-6094. Just ask for Pastmaster Dave.
And we're back with Jim Stevens, the author of Lodge Business, the theoretical application of entrepreneurial business practices to Blue Lodge. And before the break, we were talking generally about the purpose portion of the book. The various sections of the book, I think, fit very well with the way Blue Lodges are structured. There's a section that we spent some time at our last episode talking about a marketing plan. Mm-hmm. You touched on the senior leadership team. Meetings, obviously finances are a big part of Blue Lodge, but as a lodge secretary, one of the sections that I found most interesting in terms of looking toward the future was the documenting of processes as well as tracking results, which I think those kind of go hand in hand as well. And talk a little bit about that and how that can apply to our Blue Lodges.
Well, in business, the old saying, and I say it in the book, and then I actually say, this isn't completely true, but if it's worth doing, it's worth tracking. There's some partial truth to that, but it's not fully true. But there's plenty of numerical metrics in Freemasonry that have meaning to us, or may have meaning to us, and by tracking something or providing a measurable, that's how you determine that success along the road towards the BHAG. If you're setting a goal, in the Blue Lodge, maybe 5 years is an appropriate kind of outside goal. And 5 years is a long time. So if you don't have road markers and ways to say, yeah, we're on this path, you can very quickly get off. And so that's where measurables come in. So I give a couple examples in the book, like, if your purpose of your lodge is to make a mason, in purest of simplicity, we're going to make masons. Well, what does that mean? Well, we're going to make 25 a year. Okay, now you've got a measurable. You can define it. But that's not enough of a goal, because 25, how do you make them? Well, if you were in business, that's essentially your sale. Okay, and if you're tracking your sales, you're not going to know how to generate them. So you back up a step and say, well, how do we get them? Okay, well, we have open houses, we have other stuff. So we need to start tracking petitions and interest and start kind of using those numerics to decide what's successful and what's not. You know, you guys on the podcast have talked a number of times about events that are no longer success, fundraisers that cost more than it raises. You know, well, if you're not tracking the numbers and looking at them from an objective perspective, that's what happens. And while it's difficult, there's a politic behind killing something that isn't working. At least you have data that justifies the decision. And it doesn't have to be, you know, needing 5 CPAs and 6 accountants to be able to track it. Keep it as simple as you possibly can. And then the other side of that is, you know, tracking the processes. And, you know, I don't know how all lodges work. I know at Lodge 43, my home lodge, we have an officer's manual. And that has a lot of what each of the positions is supposed to do. It gets updated on occasion, and it is handy. But the operation of the lodge really isn't kind of to a point what needs to be documented. It's the stuff that you're going to be doing. So again, if you're doing our purpose is to make a Mason, those are the processes you need to understand and decide what is important to that and what isn't. So if your purpose is to make a Mason, then maybe some of the other stuff that you might be doing in lodge, pancake breakfasts and that kind of stuff, all right, that might bring a Mason in. You keep that. But reading the minutes, that doesn't help you make a Mason. So that helps kind of differentiate those things that maybe you're spending too much effort on and losing some brothers over. So there's a minimum requirement that the Grand Lodge will say you have to do, but then after that, your purpose then defines your processes, and your processes help you determine what it is that you should be doing, and it helps provide that guidance. And then once you have all of that figured out, then it provides the ability to train and bring the next group of leaders in, because now you have a document that you can base those conversations on, and go from it. I am not a believer in like the ISO 9002 where everything has to be documented down to, you know, the sharpness of the pencil for the report that you're filling in. That's not what I'm advocating. You take the most important things to you and make sure you understand that process. I use an example in the book about the application. So it becomes very obvious that if you ask, especially an older Mason, what the process to apply to the lodge is, you're going to get different opinions. But the reality of it is there's only one process. And so if it's documented and discussed, then everybody understands that. And you won't get different opinions. You might even lose some brothers because one person thought the process was this way and it didn't happen that way, and the guy disappeared. So it helps get everybody on the same page.
Yeah. And I have to look at it from a much more practical standpoint, even of anyone who served in more than one Masonic body in a leadership role has probably experienced the fact that you come into that office and your predecessor basically goes, here are the keys, have fun. And so you really don't know going into that leadership position exactly what do I need to be doing. I had a great group of past masters that worked with me when I was in the East, but on day one, it's like you think you know what you're supposed to be doing. Right. But there's really no, here are the things you need to do in January. Here by April, you need to make sure these things are done. And I think that from a practical standpoint, documenting the processes, even within leadership positions, more than, when you're junior warden, you got to learn this degree, and senior warden, you've got to know this degree, and so on and so forth. So
right.
I found it on a much more practical aspect.
It's and again, the book is on lodge business, so it's not about ritual and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's the stuff that it takes to run the organization. Simple stuff like Lodge 43 just completed its annual audit, and the Grand Lodge Pennsylvania has a new process in place. So last year it was brand new. Everybody kind of fumbled through it. we got through it again this year. Now we're ready to sit down, and the chairman is working through so that the next chairman, the next committee next year has this list. Here's the process now with this new system of how you work through it, because there's no guidelines at all, and there's hours wasted by volunteers because it's not provided to them.
So Jim, you wrote the book that it could be used to, from what I see, any lodge, any state, any jurisdiction, and I was even thinking it'd be really good for some of the appendant bodies that can turn a little quicker than a blue lodge.
Sure.
But what are there anything like when you from talking about this with other people like us and other readers, have you learned anything that you maybe didn't think about when you were writing it? Like, are there certain goals? You didn't try to prejudice and say these are goals you need to have.
No. Because
every lodge is a little bit different.
Absolutely.
But are there any, like, some that showed up more than others that you really?
I have not yet gotten a sense of what would be a common theme. Like, everybody is saying, I read your book and we've decided we need to do this. Okay, and I didn't really expect that. In fact, I hoped that everybody would take something different out of it. That being said, the copy that's in front of me says not for resale. This was my, pre-published review. And I've started to take notes in the back of things that have come up that if I do another version or I write another part that I want to be able to kind of expand on. And, some of the stuff that I've written through the book, too, is I don't really go into how to make, say, a goal SMART, which would be specific, measurable, actionable, relative, and timely. And so I need to expand some more of the details on that, and that has already become very clear.
Because one of the things I hear every Masonic officer in every group always talking about is we need more members. We need more. And I obviously I always go against the grain. I'm like, well, we need a higher percentage participating. So to me, my measurable goal that I would like to see is instead of 10% participation, 40% or something like that. But I mean, the number crunchers like the secretaries and the treasurers, you need to have more members because you need more dues. I want more doers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that essence goes back to the whole, the first part of the book about purpose. And what I was trying to get to is, if that's what you identify with, then you need to find a lodge and an organization, in a body, whether it be a pennant body or a lodge, that matches up to that, what you want to do, even here within Lancaster County, there's small lodges and there's large lodges, Now, from an appendant body, you brought up appendant bodies. You're right. I think a lot of the appendant bodies probably have a little easier time turning the ship, making changes, but they also gain something else, and that is they, generally speaking, have already some sort of theme to their purpose. Whether it be grotto or tall cedars or Scottish rite or the arch or any of those, there's already a little better defined purpose for that. Okay, there's usually one of the two, whether it be fellowship and charity or something ritual and charity. It's not as broad as the Blue Lodges are, and so I think that helps them. It gives them a little leg forward. The other thing that helps them, to be honest with you, is most of the people, at least as I understand it, that are leading them have already been in the East, so they already have some leadership experience, and now they practiced, so to speak, in the Blue Lodge, and now they're off into an appendant body doing what they learned from the Blue Lodge.
Yeah, maybe we could get people to do it backwards, go through the appendant body lines, make the mistakes there, and then run the Blue Lodge well.
I actually served as high priest in chapter the year before I served as master in my lodge, and it was a tremendous help.
I imagine
mainly because it was a much smaller body, as you said, a much more focused body, and any jitters that anyone might have had in terms of actually running a meeting, it's a whole lot less stuffy, shall we say.
Yeah, I've been in front of and in charge of a number of nonprofits, charities. I serve on a search and rescue team for almost 18 years now, and I was chief of that. And one of the things that I always talk to, especially new officers coming into search and rescue, is you never know what it's like to be chief until you're the person where the buck stops, you know? And any practice you can get on that and being prepared to be the man, the better off you're going to be.
I think we're going to take another break so we can wake Larry up. He's kind of nodded off over there, but
breaking news: Larry is still alive. Everyone.
He is still alive.
Once
we're glad
again,
for that.
Before we do take that break, we're with Jim Stevens tonight. Lodge business, theoretical application of entrepreneurial business practices for the Blue Lodge.
I love how all of you have to read that to get it.
It's really important. You can buy this book at Amazon.com.
Yes.
You can get it in the print version, which is $11, or you can get it in Kindle for $5.99.
Yes.
And you can get it on Google Books, or you can go to any fine bookstore, your favorite bookstore, and if they don't have it, they'll order it for you. So
and if Larry doesn't lock his Honda Fit, it's usually in the back deck.
We'll be right back.
Is that true, Jim? Can you get it in any bookstore?
Bookstore?
It is priced through Amazon that any bookstore can order it and are able to supply it. I am not aware that any have done so yet, but it is established through Amazon.
So yeah,
to be able to do that.
So we may need, when we come back, we might need to ask you about the whole process for when we rate our podcasting book.
I'll be more than happy to walk you through it. It was great.
Why choose George J. Grove & Sons for your next home improvement project? At George J. Grove & Sons, we've built our reputation on quality and trust for more than 50 years. From planning to materials to installation, George J. Grove promises a home improvement experience second to none. Whether your goal is reducing energy costs, decreasing maintenance, updating curb appeal, or simply increasing the value of your home, the George J. Grove team will recommend and provide solutions that stand the test of time. Call 717-393-0859 for an estimate or visit us at georgejgrove.com.
And we're back. So we're here with James Stevens and Lodge Business, blah, 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 because I don't have a book in front of me.
Very good.
Which you can purchase on Amazon.com, of course. But it is time to talk about our advertisers and our sponsors. So big shout out to Historic Smithton Inn and Weathered Vineyards, George Grove & Son, and DNS Cigars. So Jack's not here. Tim, are you ready to do the news?
No news, but I also wanted to thank our Patreons who also support the podcast.
Dan and Jason.
As well as our, what do we call the yellow people on the wall?
I don't know, but I want to know why my yellow sticky is in pencil and everybody else is in marker.
Oh.
I think we just filled that in today because we knew you were coming.
that was here when Jack wrote it. It was a while ago.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a whole stack of them here that have fallen off.
I was wondering where they were.
Here, I'll just read some random ones. Ben Kaminsky, George Grove, Jason Brewster, Ken Hudson, Dave Augustine, and I can't pronounce that guy's name. Is Russian. So there we go.
Nice. And you can find Masonic Light Podcast on Patreon. And what levels do we have? $1, $5?
1, $5, and $13.
Nice. There you go.
Alrighty. So let's come back with Jim, right?
No, we're going to
go to Michelle Snyder because we're going to do this whole thing weird.
Right, exactly. We're going to listen to Michelle Snyder and possibly Jack will phone in some news.
And then we'll come back and wrap up with Jim.
Sounds wonderful.
The 12 Dancing Princesses Unlocked. This folk tale was recorded by the Grimm's brothers and is sometimes called the worn-out dancing shoes. With the right key, we can learn much from this lovely story. But first you may ask, why unlock fairy tales? Once upon a time stories are the greatest love stories ever told. Love of mother for child, of brother for sister, of the hero and maiden for each other. They tell us of epic struggles and the conquering power of good. They are layered with history as they migrate and change with the cultures that tell them. Not only do these wonder tales share ancient ethics and cultural traditions, they are fractured records of prehistoric knowledge. Reading the stars and foretelling the seasons was critical to survival during the Ice Ages and facilitated defense and trade on the seas. Although in our time knowledge of astronomy and the zodiac may be common, one secret buried in oral tradition is how old this knowledge really is. The story of the 12 princesses holds such a treasure. 12 beautiful princesses sleep in 12 beds in the same room with doors securely locked. Each morning their shoes look as though they had been dancing all night. The king, desperate to discover what is going on, offers a great prize to the one who finds out the truth. Several princes try and fail, but then a soldier tricks the 12 girls and follows them through a trap door, then into 12 boats, down a river, to a castle where the princesses dance all night with 12 princes. The soldier retrieves a branch from each of 3 trees he passes, one of silver, one of gold, and one of diamonds, and then finds a golden cup, which he gives the king as proof. This is a wonderfully enchanting story filled with symbols and allegory. With roots in astronomical knowledge going back 77,000 years, this tale tells of keeping secrets, represented by the mysteriously worn-out shoes, and getting to know the 12 zodiacal constellations, the princes they dance with. Together, the princes and princesses make 24, the number of hours in a day. Time is symbolized by the movement of the river and the boats. The 24 characters dance with the mathematics necessary to measure time using the stars. The expression, the dance of the planets, refers to the intricate movement of the wandering spheres against the backdrop of the never-changing stars. The music to which they dance alludes to Pythagorean concept of the music of the spheres, a theory as to the creation of matter and harmony of vibration. The golden cup alludes to the sun, or the grail. The precious branches symbolize the value of gaining such knowledge. Next time we will find another part of our golden key in Archetypes Unlocked.
And we're back with Jim Stevens. Jim, the last 2 sections of the book I wanted to get your comments on are perhaps 2 that we do the poorest as an organization, in my opinion, and that's evaluation and developing talent. So many times in our Blue Lodges, it's literally
we evaluate it by eye contact, isn't that? Is that
well,
how
that's
it works?
it. I mean, that seems to be our standard. So talk about how we might use the principles from your book in both evaluating what we're working toward our purpose and toward those goals, as well as the never-ending challenge that we all face, which is developing future talent.
Well, I mean, I think it starts, Pete has said it, I don't know on how many episodes at this point, but, asking is step 1, but, that kind of starts to be the test. Identifying that talent, is hard before the request, so to speak. But in business, the way I would do it with say new employees that might have management potential, that kind of thing, is I would give them small tasks, little things. Don't go big. They're gonna fail, and you don't want to be setting them up for failure. So don't give them the pancake breakfast to be in charge of it. Give them
syrup, just syrup.
Syrup, yeah, butter. Give them something small. See how they do with it, and then if you have time over the course of a number of those small things, you'll start to see ability. Recently, I had a past master tell me that, in his opinion, there's 2 types of worshipful masters. There's either an administrator or there's a ritualist. And I think there's probably some truth behind that. But everybody has different leadership styles and different talents. So your job as the leader of the lodge is to identify who has those talents. My example, personally, I am not the person you're going to ask to go out and cold call non-dues members, cold call different stuff. I'm not that person. But if you need to plan an event, I'm good at planning. And so you start to use those little tasks that you're going to give the potential leader to start to help them understand what their abilities are, and you start to understand it. And then you advance that. So instead of it being syrup, next time it's plates. I mean, you make it a little harder every time, a little more responsibility, and that gives them the ability to grow into it. One of the greatest parts of Freemasonry from a leadership position is the progressive chairs. There's a lot of lodges obviously struggling to get people and to fill the chairs. But the progressive chairs, if truly progressive, gives everybody a little more responsibility, a little something else each year that they then can grow into. But advancing somebody all the way to, say, junior warden, you're skipping that entire development process. So it takes time to do that.
One of the things, when we Tim and I were at the D&S CIGARS, one of our sponsors, we were there today, and talking to one of our brothers, Brian Smith. And Brian is a nurse at the hospital and busy work schedule, and he also is a part-time dad. I guess he gets his daughter every other weekend or something like that. So Brian cares. Brian really wants to be a good Mason, and he's got a lot of leadership things. But there is no way in his life right now he could ever, at least by the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, you need to, if you're in those officer chairs, it's like 6 nights a month, maybe 7 nights a month.
Yes.
So, how to get men like that to be valued, because there's some things that I'm sure he could do, like running the lodge, like business-wise, he could get a lot of stuff done, but he would never be able to work through the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania structure of learning all the degrees, and so he'll never be a master, even though he might be a good leader.
I think one of the things that Freemasonry gets wrong, you guys talk about apron sniffing and past everythings and that kind of stuff, and there is, to a point, a lack of respect given people who don't have that PM after their name. But every organization, every position in that organization has equal value. There is nobody, especially in Freemasonry, we're all meeting on the level. And, I talk about in search and rescue, I've been chief. I'm usually the plan chief. I'm the one who's telling people where to go look. That's my trained job. But that doesn't make me any more or less important than the guy who's sitting at the front desk signing people in, or the person that's preparing the hot coffee when they come back from the search, or the person that actually finds the missing person. There's a job for everybody. There's a job for every talent. There's a job for every skill. There's a job for every disability, everything. And so I would encourage a master that has, the likes of him in a lodge to find what that is. Okay, so he works nights, for example. He can't come to lodge, but he could do the breakfast. He could help at the pancake breakfast. He would organize the pancake breakfast. Let's say he does really want to go to the east, okay? And we obviously, especially here in Pennsylvania, we have ritual requirements and all kinds of other requirements. There is still no reason why, it just off the top of my head, he couldn't, let's say, pair up with another brother who would help him on a lot of the stuff that he just can't get to. And we should be helping each other anyway. So, he's going to have to meet the minimum requirements. But a lot of the other stuff that he may not have time as a master, he can get a partner. That could be his junior warden or his senior warden, or it could be a past master. And I talk about that in the book, about the different chairs, helping each other. But, that's what it takes to make a good team, is you find the talents and abilities of each of them and fit them together. So I would encourage, the master of that lodge to reach out to him and find that place, because there is a place. There is a place in that lodge that he can act as a leader and might even be able to get to the east, even with the busy work schedule that he has.
So and before we took our last break, we were talking about the processes that you went through in writing your book. And I know we have some authors in our midst. Or
Larry's an author. He
wannabes.
sold 8 copies of The Red Serpent.
On 4 different planets, though.
A lot more than that.
Okay, all right. Anyway.
More than 4 planets or more than 8 books?
So how difficult was it to write a book through using Amazon, or how does all that work?
So the process that I went through, first of all, I used a professional editing service twice. The first one was on what would be essentially content editing. They gave me suggestions in places that they felt like was short on stuff I needed to fill in. And then when I got to the final version, I had them do a full, editorial review, grammatical, spelling, that kind of stuff. And I would say to any author, it's worth its money in gold. The opinions that you're going to get from these people and you can Google them. There's a number of good services out there. The one that I used was, you can use any one you want without giving anybody free advertising. You're going to get great ideas. These people read books all the time, and it's worth its money. Amazon itself, Amazon runs the world. There's no doubt about it. And they've made it amazingly easy to self-publish. They give you templates. The picture that's the cover of the hardcover book, I took myself. It's my Blue Lodge. You can put up your own pictures. They can give you the format. There's about 12 to 24 different layouts. And you get to pick the paper you want and the sizing. There's tutorials, walks you right through it. Really simple to get it published and done. And the beauty of the Amazon system is you don't prepay for any of it. So it's printed on demand. So you're not paying for an inventory. If you go to a publishing house, they're going to require a certain number of books be published, or you have to buy them, or that kind of stuff. When I did it, I chose to have the book available outside the Amazon system, as we said earlier in the episode. So if one of the publishing houses want to pick it up or something, they can order it through Amazon just like a supplier would. That adds some cost structure to it, but the cost structure I found to be very, very reasonable. The one downside I did not like is the templates that they have, and I'm assuming it's because of the way Kindle works, but the templates they have for the Kindles, I couldn't get the same cover. So if you look at the Kindle version, it's a different cover. But other than that, it was amazingly simple.
So, Larry, you can get that second book out now.
Yes, I can.
You guys couldn't hear the bitterness in that stare.
The process is easy. The getting to several hundred pages may not be.
Yeah, I can't remember the size of my first, but it was close to 400.
Yeah.
And I went through exactly the same thing you did with the concept editor and the editor to make sure the grammar was right and the French was perfect and stuff like that. So, yeah, I had to go through the same thing.
Available in French?
We designed a cover, which was a little bit different.
Oh, okay.
We did a cover, and it was picked up in Kindle. And
unfortunately, those editors leaked it to Dan Brown, who stole your idea.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Well, that was just they were just a cover. That's
right.
Damn Dan Brown.
Oh, Jim, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome back anytime.
Again, Lodge Business by James Stevens, Amazon, Google, or any fine bookstore.
And folks, we're going to try and talk Jim into doing some little clips for us in the future. We'll see if that pans out. Jason.
Yes, sir.
We should wrap this thing up.
Let's go home.
What anything up? What we got a plug for the district or for the world?
I know in March we have Academy Masonic Knowledge, and I don't know the date. I'm a terrible person, and the internet is terrible down here. So, but it's typically the fourth weekend in it's usually. I believe.
You would think as a scholar I would know, but the only thing I know is I'm out of town. I think it's the weekend of St. Patrick's Day because that's the weekend I'm out of town.
Well, you know what? Check the show notes. Pennsylvania Academy Masonic Knowledge. You can come in the flesh, or you can watch it
on YouTube.
Yeah, you can stream it online.
I can tell you for Tall Cedars, the fourth Tuesday in February is our Master Mason Seafood Night. So any Master Masons, welcome to come out. Or if you're Jason's doing a great job. Jason's losing weight, so he's not able to eat 18 pounds of seafood and butter.
I can eat 18 pounds of seafood, just
not the butter.
And not the deep fried seafood. No.
But if you want, you can come at 7 p.m. if you want to miss the dinner and just get your yellow dog degree.
Correct.
So it's casual dress. Just come on out. We may have a keg of cedar sap available, and
I can't drink that either.
Well, I can. I'll be your designated drinker.
Nice, but no riding in my car.
On February the 17th is the next meeting of the Cigar Lodge up at Cigars International in Hamburg. As I mentioned earlier, the previous one was snowed out, so there will likely be big attendance at this one, and encourage any cigar smokers in the group to come out and have a good time.
All righty. Larry, you want to take us out of here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't we ask Jim if he has anything going on?
Jim, do you have anything going? You have any more speaking engagements? Any more podcasts?
There's a couple speaking engagements, but they're coming and going. It's good.
Any inside information on the mega church that's going to be built across from my house?
No,
I can't.
Not in this forum.
See, darn it.
Nice try.
I got to try.
Who is it? Victory that's coming?
Yeah.
Banjos.
Wake him up quick.
Somebody hit him.
Fine. It's going to be a short close tonight. Just want to bring up the fact that Masonic Light Podcast Gala, the Roger Kipling dinner, at the
Gala. Gala, whatever.
Gala,
but there's no G.
Potatoes.
No J in it.
Okay. Again, the dinner will be at Media Heights Country Club Saturday evening, April the 27th, 2019. It's going to be a fantastic night with great entertainment, lots of fun. And plan on being there. You can actually make reservations now for the dinner through Eventbrite.
Yeah, just go to MasonicLight.com and
Yep, exactly.
there's a link.
We're there. Come on, let's go. We want to make this thing successful. The proceeds to this dinner help keep us on the air. So help us come out and have a great night.
We're going to do a live show that evening.
And it'll be black tie, dark suit. Bring your wives, bring your girlfriends, whatever.
Probably not a good idea to bring both.
True.
Not at all.
That's all I have. This is Larry Merris saying good night, good day.
You forgot to mention our editor, Tyrone Shoelaces.
Oh, man.
Okay, yeah, special thanks to our Josh the intern producer for doing a great show. Thanks for Jason for overseeing him,
He's doing a great job.
And also to our marketing director, Tim Dedman, for sitting in for Jack Hartley, our guest, Jim Stevens.
Thank you for having me.
Pete Ruggieri, our production manager, executive producer.
You guys need plaques on the table or something.
Yeah.
No, we actually need a script is what we need.
Yeah, exactly. There's a concept.
And again, we thank Lodge 665 in Everett for providing Studio 665. We do appreciate everything you guys ever done for us.
It's like a benediction for a big dinner. Never ends.
Again, Masonic Light Podcast, Gala, Gula, whatever.
Everybody, Masonic Light Gulag. Everybody have a good night. Thank you, Jim. This is Pete saying goodbye.
Good night.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Ciao.
You've been listening to the Masonic Light Podcast with brothers Pete Ruggieri, Larry Merris, Jason Lewis, Jack Hartley, and me, your dulcet-toned announcer, Bryan Hill. Listen to all our episodes on our website, www.masoniclight.com, or via your favorite podcasting service.